Lauren woke up at his apartment in his captain's chair. It took him several moments to realize where he was and who he was exactly. He remembered the night before in disjointed fragments, but he couldn't in good conscience say he didn't know what happened. This experience changed him fundamentally as a person. He wasn't sure exactly what he believed about life anymore. What was he as a person if he was capable of that? He didn't feel ashamed or embarrassed, but he was deeply confused. He reached for his phone on the floor and dialed Alonzo. Alonzo picked up. "Hey man, it's Lauren." "What's up, man?" "I gotta ask you a quick question." "Alright," Alonzo said with cautious suspicion. "If you sleep with a hermaphrodite, does that make you gay?" "Depends on how big his dick was," Alonzo said with a chuckle. "I don't know, like regular size?" "Hold up, are you like being real right now?" Lauren took a moment. What he asked was so outrageous he could easily distance himself from it without suspicion. But on the other hand, if anyone could give him real advice on this, it'd be Zoe. But on the other hand, what if this did make him gay? In the eyes of men, it didn't matter what your circumstances were. One time was enough to put you in a box for the rest of your life. "Nah, man, that shit did happen." "Wow, and because I'm your gay friend, I feel the gay questions?" "I sort of thought that was established." Alonzo chuckled over the phone. "I'll tell you this, you ain't boring, so run me through this." "Remember that DJ I was talking about?" "I know, the one you woke me up over talking about how you nutted over?" "Yeah, I think I recall that conversation." "I found her, or him. Fuck it, her. She showed me her rig. Then she showed me her rig." Alonzo laughed full out. "Fuck, I think I'm gonna have to call the gay delegation to get a ruling on this one." "Wait a second, there's a gay delegation?" "No, dumbass, I was fucking with you." "Okay, bottom line, do you feel the urge to suck a dick now?" "No." "Are you looking to get turned out?" "No." "You probably ain't gay." "I do want to see her again though, and though I don't have an interest in her dick, it didn't repulse me either. She could be anything when the music plays and I wouldn't say boo about it." "Then you need to stop thinking about what it looks like and just see what happens." Lauren exhaled deeply, and that was probably the only advice that he needed at the time. What else could he do? "Thanks, brother. I love you." "So gay," Alonzo said with a chuckle before hanging up the phone. With a moment to himself to think, he remembered the story. He remembered he had to write something down, but who would believe it? He barely believed it. What did sex have to do with the music? He chuckled. Sex had a lot to do with most aspects of his life. He didn't see why any of this was all too different. He dug into his pocket, retrieving the number she had written down, and gave her a call. This wasn't over. He wouldn't allow it to be. Chapter 6. Percolator. Cashmere. Lauren decided to meet Euphoria at her next gig, which was somewhere way out on Cermak. Lauren got to the house early. He had to drive over like 20 railroad tracks to end up on some crooked crisscross angle street. He read with the assistance of his interior car light a Kurt Vonnegut book. He didn't read much, but he did tend to read to fill in empty quiet moments. He saw from side glances people filing into a house with a worn gate sprinkled with the remnants of ice from a winter that didn't want to end. He saw a black van pull up with a red stripe on the side, which put him in the mindset of the A-Team immediately. Euphoria hopped out of the passenger seat in a black Raider starter jacket and hat. She wore blue jeans and Jordans. If Lauren would have saw her tonight for the first time, he would have called her him. Two other dudes hopped out of a van. She grabbed a book bag bulging with records. The two men were behemoths of men. From the looks of them, they could more than likely give Boilermaker a run in the muscle department. Lauren hopped out of his car and ran over to Euphoria. One of the two guys who was in the process of lifting her turntables all but dropped it and ran up on Lauren with the same intensity of a junkyard dog defending his lot. Euphoria turned and witnessed the event, and with a mere glance, the man stopped in his tracks as if she had beckoned him not to. Lauren held no ill will. He knew how things were with men. Maybe he moved a bit too fast, not allowing him the proper time to assess him. Whatever the reason, Lauren slowed down, approaching Euphoria slowly as a man approaching an unfamiliar animal. The two men just went back to moving her equipment, which was 2 big pieces. "Hey, what up?" Lauren stepped up with a bit of confusion on how to greet her. He leaned in for a kiss as if testing what it felt like. Euphoria stopped him with an outstretched hand and went in for a hug. And not one that conveyed passion, but more of brotherhood, a sharp handshake which moved into a one-armed hug, capped by a backslap. Lauren was confused, but not quite surprised. He wasn't sure what any of it should be. The two guys hopped into the van before Lauren could offer to help. Whatever they had to do in the house, they had done, and they were ready to move it along. They didn't say a word between them. They merely glanced at Euphoria as one may if they were in a secret cabal. The two approached the house as the two drove off. "Who were they?" Lauren asked, only because the entire exchange felt weird. "Guys I know," was all Euphoria said, giving back the exact same casual energy he gave her. Prodigy's Voodoo People was playing once they entered. The crowd itself was an abstract collage of faces sprinkled with many different colors. "Do you like that new electronica?" Lauren asked while Euphoria began connecting wires on her tables. "It's cool," she said without much fanfare. Lauren couldn't tell if she was being distant or it was just how she was. He felt as if she spoke like last night never happened, and honestly, maybe that was the tone he should adopt as well, so he didn't have to ask himself questions about his sexuality he wasn't truly ready to ask. Lauren felt the music, let himself slip into the mood, feeding off the energy of the collective. Euphoria flipped her records and placed them on the tables, beginning her pre-check for takeoff. The music suddenly stopped, yanking everyone from anything they thought they were doing. The rhythm decided who you were in that moment, and when it went away, you were stripped of all your identity, if only for a time. The beat bubbled and popped when Euphoria spun. Time for the percolator. She didn't need to announce herself. The music told everyone who she was. The flourishes she put on the track made a song that was not her own sing in her voice. The crowd instantly fell into her trance and danced hard. Lauren had to concentrate as not to lose himself, purely for the purpose of intellectual pursuit. All side conversation ceased. Everything that wasn't the sound didn't exist in our reality. The set continued on 40 minutes, maybe an hour. Lauren had lost track of time. He was in trance almost as he was the first night. If he hadn't anchored himself, he would have been just as lost, probably busted nuts on the floor by now. A man walked up to the DJ booth. He was wearing a Where's the Beef Wendy's shirt for reasons Lauren couldn't begin to understand. He got very close to Euphoria, so close Lauren actually pulled himself from bliss to inspect the scene. The man walked to the side of Euphoria with an inflated sense of worth given to him by his privilege. He circled Euphoria. She kept spinning, making absolutely no move that would indicate any of this was actually happening. The man leaned in and took in her scent, sniffing as hard as if there was a line of cocaine on her shoulder. Lauren couldn't ignore this shit anymore. He threw down a red card. "Excuse me, man. Back the fuck away from her." "Her?" the man said as if her was a deeply confusing statement to him. Lauren hadn't thrown a punch at someone since grammar school, but it came out of him as a reflex. In that moment, he couldn't tell if it were in defense of her honor or in defense of his manhood. If she was a he, who the fuck was he? The punch landed and barely moved the man, even though it felt like the weight he put behind it should have moved him back at the very least. The man looked down at his own blood with amusement. Euphoria half looked to Lauren with a terror he didn't think her capable of. She didn't speak, but kept the music going. Lauren readied himself for the inevitable consequences of his actions, but as a surprise to him, a woman dancing stopped abruptly, as if tugged by a puppeteer's strings, and grabbed the man Lauren struck. The "Where's the beef, man?" flung the woman with no concern for chivalry or decorum, and she disappeared into the crowd. Another person grabbed him, then another. It was as if they activated like Manchurian candidates. Euphoria began unplugging her equipment and stuffed all her records in her bag. "Grab it, let's bounce," she said to Lauren. He grabbed her turntables and she grabbed another piece. The two nearly bolted to Lauren's car. As they tossed all Euphoria's shit in the back seat, the man came running out of the house with the ungodly speed of Jesse Owens. "The fuck?" Lauren said in shock while hopping into the driver's seat and gunning the engine. As Where's the Beef almost closed in, he was suddenly tackled by a short man with a mullet. "What the fuck?" Lauren yelled again as he took off. "The fuck is this nigga, T-1000? Lauren said as he was tackled by a wave of people with the same veracity as a zombie attack. Lauren checked his rear view, half expecting to see someone behind him in pursuit. The two drove a few blocks. Lauren hoped she'd be the one to talk first, but she was halfway through a joint and calm as if it never happened. You want to talk about that?" Lauren asked. "Nah, it is what it is. I have to deal with what comes from that later." "What's that supposed to mean?" Euphoria handed Lauren her joint, but he declined this time around. She glanced up at the sky as if there was something relevant up there, but took a toke instead. "There are things you know and things you don't, and to know them means you're in." "The fuck, are you in the mafia or some shit?" Euphoria chuckled. "Yeah, sure. Turn here." Lauren turned. He passed under a viaduct, and the same black 18 van was parked under there. One of the two big men she came with grabbed her turntables. Euphoria hopped out. "Look, you're cool, and I hate to drop this on you like this, but I got to go. If you roll with me now, you're in. I can't tell you what's gonna happen because I don't know. Knowing me is dangerous." Euphoria walked to the passenger side of the van. Lauren hurried to her side, walking and talking. "You in or out?" she said, making it clear this was the last time they'd meet or the start of something. Lauren had a fraction of a second to decide before her door closed. He hopped into the side of the van. He saw one of the two men hop into his car and drive behind them. Why was she dodging this? How did they know she'd come this way? It seemed unusually coordinated, as if they had did a bank job together. Chapter 7. No Way Back. Adonis. The light of the city poured over the car with a rhythm of its own. Their van made ridiculous turns and doubled back several times, almost as if they had forgotten where they were going, or were just joyriding. "I thought you were going to tell me something," Lauren insisted. "I feel like I've been pretty cool up until now. How'd you like my set?" "It was still the best shit I've ever heard in my life. That hasn't changed." "Who was that guy?" I really have no way to explain any of this to you. I should have went with my first instinct," Euphoria said, almost muttering to herself. "You moved me the same way I moved you. Transcendent, no bodies, pure consciousness. After we fucked, I knew you believed it." Lauren looked at the driver, growing suddenly self-conscious, and Euphoria knew it. "He's nobody that would give a fuck. He can't even hear you." Lauren shook his head in disbelief, embarrassed for the big man in the front seat getting dismissed so easily. "You saw me that night and you didn't care. You impressed me." The van turned down an alley. "If we survive this, I will absolutely tell you everything. Some of it you'll understand, some of it you won't. Not at first." Euphoria patted her driver on the back as if it were the spark that lit the fuse to whatever the powder keg was at the end of the string. The big man stopped the van abruptly with the urgency of a criminal fleeing the scene. He dipped into his glove compartment and a gun tumbled down as easily as if it were dispensed from a pop machine. Lauren's eyes widened in shock. Whatever it was that was supposed to happen, he had no idea why a gun was involved. The big man leaned out of the window and blazed off shots at something Lauren couldn't see. Suddenly, a spectral figure that had a camouflage that sucked in all the colors from the night landed in front of the van. Lauren was paralyzed with fear. The only reason he held it together was because Euphoria held it together to a suspicious degree. The driver of the van hopped out, and the colors of night faded slightly. They warped around something bigger than a man, but not too unlike a man. It couldn't be believed by the casual onlooker. Suddenly it appeared as if its abdomen opened up and its guts shot out, reaching like hands, though they were just a blur of color that Lauren had to fill in the blanks to make sense of. The tendrils of nighttime wrapped the big man's arms, then pierced his stomach. Lauren couldn't understand what he was seeing until the blood splattered on the door. Euphoria hopped out of the car only because Lauren was too surprised to grab her and pull her back. Euphoria stood in front of the thing, silently holding her hands out, almost as if in a plea. The dazzling colors flickered wildly, as if in reaction to the things never said. The man on the driver's side fell over, and the snake-like tentacles moved in a writhing motion in front of Euphoria, as if measuring her. The thing and Euphoria stood in front of each other for several seconds, just staring, until the thing broke the silence and said, "I don't believe you." It took a quick step forward. Its reflective body whipped its tentacled guts at Euphoria until shots were fired. Each shot that struck true seemed to reveal another piece of the thing, as if the pain was tearing away its defenses. It looked almost insexual, but it wasn't, and with each bullet it shrank. The thing dropped onto the ground, but Lauren walked up on the thing and kept pulling the trigger until it clicked. He had taken the gun from the driver and took his chances. He glanced down at the thing, and it was the man from the party. His body was disproportionate and appeared to be a mess, as if it had been the guest of honor at an autopsy. "He's gonna be so pissed," Euphoria said. "You don't have to worry about that. He's dead." "No, he's not," Euphoria rebuked matter-of-factly. "Your boy, he's..." Euphoria ran over to the big man, who was breathing shallow, taking short, huffing breaths that seemed almost like a dog panting. "Do you have a cell phone or something?" Euphoria ignored Lauren. She put her lips to the big man's mouth as if doing CPR, but she wasn't. She spasmed and coughed as a mother bird regurgitated its food to feed its children. The muscle man's breathing steadied, and he sat up as if his wound meant nothing. He looked to Euphoria as if he had heard her say something, and he nodded. He hustled over to the dead man, hoisted him over his shoulder, and tossed him in the side door of the van. He hustled over to Lauren and put his hand out as if Lauren knew what the deal was. He handed him his gun back, too confused to contradict. Lauren moved to get back to the van, but Euphoria grabbed him. "Not that way. Can't risk it." Euphoria drugged Lauren and they ran through a wooded area somewhere out by the lake. After several minutes, they stopped running and emerged a few blocks from Euphoria's house. Lauren found his bearings, and the heat of the moment simmered enough for him to think straight. What was that thing I killed?" "Again, you didn't kill him." "What the fuck ever? What in the fuck is happening?" "I'll show you." Nah, I've been pretty cool about all this shit up until now. I'm not going anywhere with you." Euphoria looked around briefly, as if she was none too kind with the attention she was getting. She extended her hand and waited. Lauren looked at her with confusion. The two stood there for a long while. Lauren took her hand. Chapter 8. Can You Feel It, Mr. Fingers? Lauren regained consciousness. There was green vomit on the floor. He was back in Euphoria's basement, having no idea how he was there. Euphoria emerged from the canopy of green nude with both her parts there for all the world to see. She emerged from the garden as Adam and Eve. You needed to see me. I already saw you. No, you didn't. This is me, she said, holding out both her hands as if giving him time to inspect her body. Yeah, I saw. I know all about your situation. All the tendrils of plant life moved around Euphoria's body as if at her command, as extensions of her will. Lauren tensed up and looked around. The room was bowing as if from the view of a fish-eyed lens. The life in this room began to swirl around him as if in greeting, the same as it had the night before. Can you feel it? Came the voice in his head that was distinctly Euphoria. Lauren looked to Euphoria and her lips weren't moving. The plant all but swallowed her and only strips of random flesh were visible through the canopy. Can you feel it? She said again in his head. How are you doing this? This is my body, my real body. The plant? Yes, she said with her human body. Lauren looked back at Euphoria's human body. You were in two places at once? Yes, I can see several places at once. I bore myself to you, she spoke telepathically. What's that mean then? I can't leave or something? You can, but before you do, hear my offer. You are a creature of change. You feel sound. You want it to transcend. I can give you that. Yeah, what's the catch? Euphoria paused and looked away with her human face before steeling herself and looking Lauren in the eye. You'd have to die. Fuck that. It's not a true death, it's a transcendence. Your body would be broken down to its most primordial and reformed. Then I'd be a plant? Yes, you'd be a plant. How would I? You'd have two bodies, some even have more. You'd see through people's eyes. You could be many places at once and anyone you want to be. I picked this body because I didn't want to be a man or a woman. I wanted the choice to live however I choose. I've been through several bodies in several lifetimes. Hold on, why me and why now? My spawn is ready. We reproduce ourselves. I planted the seed 30 years ago, and it's matured. We never know when it will happen. Most never realize it happens. I checked my spawn, and it's ready to imprint itself. So I'd be a part of you? Technically, but I wouldn't control you. You'd be like my mother? I'd be your everything and anything, but even then, I couldn't control you. When we are born, we wander aimlessly without minds, only instincts. It could be years feeding off of life, growing smarter, creating eyes to see the world. Children without mothers, without sight. Most only happen upon a wandering human, and when they do, they become them. The first is your first. You become each other. So I do die. Yes, you die, but everything that was you becomes it. You transcend into a new being. And what's the catch when I'm reborn? Nothing worth doing is that easy. You have to eat people to live. People. Yes, once a year, give or take, you have to consume life or revert back to a primal force. That's it? Lauren said as if he knew there was more. We don't all quite get along very well. If you do die, ultimately, and you will one day, you will die violently. You said I could say no. Is that still an option? Euphoria thought for a moment. It would be hard, but I can have your memories erased of me, and it'd be as if none of this ever happened. Can I think about this? Sorry, no. The more you know, the more danger you're in. You have until the car ride back to your house. Lauren thought hard about all this, but nodded in acceptance. Chapter 9, Can You Feel It? Remix. He glanced at the lake in deep thought as he was driven home by the big man, Herc, and Euphoria. This was a life-changing decision that he had less than 15 minutes to make. He had the choice to be free in a way he had always dreamed, but there were so many questions he didn't know the answer to. He always knew there would be a price to pay to transcend into more than human. But to merge with a plant who for all intents and purposes killed you to become you felt like a price too steep to pay. He was worried about all the things that could go wrong, about the things he could never do. What about the things he'd come to learn that would limit him? The car stopped and he was home. Euphoria didn't wait to give him more time. She needed her answer now. Well, would I be able to feel the music still? Even deeper. Follow me, Euphoria said while caressing his cheek. I have 2 things I have to do. Come with me and let me finish, and I'll agree. Lauren now led Euphoria from the car for once, putting it on her to be boggled by his actions. The two sat in Lauren's apartment while Lauren furiously wrote on his computer. He needed to end the story that he started. This was in fact the end, but a beginning. The tale read like an acid trip, unbelievable feats of magic, love, music, death, and rebirth. When he finished, he sent it away to his editor with no concern if they liked it or not. Getting paid was no longer a concern he faced. He looked to Euphoria, half curled up on his comfy chair like a house cat, half asleep, and reached for the phone on the floor. Hey man, it's Lauren. Before you get mad, I gotta say I love you. Oh, it ain't like that and you know it. I'm going away for a month or 2. I can't get into the detail. Can you check up on my shit for me? You know my email, where my key is, and money. Use any of that. Hey, what's happening? I guess I'm running away with a girl. You must be pussy whipped, or dick slapped, or what? It's confusing. Ain't nobody more confused than me, trust me. Alright, stay up, player. He hung up the phone and Euphoria was wide awake and standing up. Alright, Lauren said. The two wandered into a clearing deep in the forest preserves at near dawn, just after drunks wandered home, but right before joggers came out. There in the clearing was a plant that snaked around the ground with vine-like tendrils. It had an alien beauty to it, something otherworldly. He looked to Euphoria, who looked at him. We are creatures of change. If you want change, you'll never find a greater one. Will it hurt? No, you'll fall asleep, then you'll wake up. Lauren shed a tear. Even though he was dying technically, it was rebirth. It was the greatest remix a househead could experience. He stepped into the field and the green tendrils reacted and snapped at Lauren violently. Euphoria cried, which made Lauren nervous. He thought to cry out, but the green vine spun him around like a spider cocooning its victim. It did this mindlessly, moving instinctively as an unthinking beast. When it spun around, his mouth and eyes went black, and this was the end of all. He felt a peaceful sleep and his mind spread into outer space. His dreams were of the sky and were distant and intangible. It was freedom. He began to melt. Everything he was droplets of life, of memories. He had died, but the earth remembered. The earth knew who he was. Chapter 10, Untitled. A hand broke free of the dirt and emerged. Breath filled into lungs that had never had the pleasure of meeting air. He looked up at the sky, and he knew the sky. He looked down to his body, and he knew the body. He was Lauren, wasn't he? The plant that birthed him, caressed him. And he saw with both bodies like two eyes disconnected. He saw himself from a body. He saw himself from the outside, and he saw himself from the inside. He was the plant, and the plant was him. I am Lauren, the plant said in the silent language of telepathy. I am Lauren, he spoke out loud with his human mouth. We are Lauren, they said with a transcendent harmony. This is Montsho Shelby, the author of the story and the narrator, so hope you liked it. Good night.